Hello everyone, it's Arcade Note here, and right after I played the first Xenoblade Chronicles, I started playing the second, and just before Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I finished them both. Unfortunately, I had struggles during the prologue chapters. Sometimes I pushed myself to continue the story, sometimes the story itself and the characters themselves pulled me in. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has even a rougher start than the first game. Took nearly twice as time to hook me to itself, sometimes frustrated me so much that I wanted to quit the game and throw it to the garbage bin and light it on fire. But now, I finished it, safe and sound. My overall feelings towards it are, let's say, positive. There were parts that I liked and loved, and there were some parts that I hated a lot. My focus by this video will be to motivate you guys once again if you also quit Xenoblade Chronicles 2 right after playing maybe 3 or 4 hours or something like that. Believe me, it clicked around 12 hours for me, and from that time it went way and way smoother. Well, that was a long intro, right? To put it simply, Xenoblade Chronicles was more like an JRPG experience from start to finish. Its events, its story progression and characters feel like they belong in a JRPG title. But Xenoblade Chronicles 2 felt more like a shonen series where a protagonist meets with a character with higher purpose, gains allies along the way to prevent a disaster from happening. From cutscenes to overall character dialogues and their behaviors, I felt like watching a shonen anime like One Piece or sometimes even My Hero Academy. And this is not a flaw, but rather than a storytelling approach, I would say. So keep that in mind that if you're not a fan of Shonen Jump series, you might also have some struggles when following the story or its comic reliefs. And trust me, there are lots of comic reliefs and shonen moments even during serious story events. Especially around 3 to 4 hours into the game, it got unbearable for me. Compared to Xenoblade Chronicles, I think the first title had more serious atmosphere, focusing on topics of survival and revenge. In terms of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it felt more like a journey of reaching a goal, learn to accept yourself and revealing the truth of history and world, and sometimes even accepting yourself. And at this point, the whole concept of revenge or going against the system lie on the villain side of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which I will be talking about soon. We take the role of Rex, who is living on a Titan, doing salvages to excavate relics of the past, selling them and making a living. This time we are not on the same world as the first Xenoblade Chronicles, but we find ourselves in a world covered with sea of clouds and people living on or sometimes inside these titans, gigantic majestic creatures that are similar to Bionis and Mechonis of the first game. The whole world and the events of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is quite mysterious and motivates players to unfold the mystery of this unique world right from the start, so there is no problem here. As Rex finishes his salvaging, we learn that the Titans are slowly dying and the world itself is on the brink of a war between countries that want to expand their territories. But our whole adventure starts when Rex accepts the salvaging job given by a mysterious group. All Rex needs to do is to excavate an ancient ship that hides a secret relic. And well, this is where Rex's story starts. As Rex discovers this relic and touches it, he gets instantly killed by one of his contractors. But then, as expected, he gets saved by that soul relic that he found, turned into a busty waifu that gave half of her life to save his savior Rex. Now Rex must protect his waifu, guide her to the legendary paradise called Elysium, which is supposed to be covered with vast greens, resources, free of wars, etc. And yes, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a story about waifus, simps against the most badass villain team of all, blades who are against the status quo, who bow down to no waifus. First of all, Shin did nothing wrong. Designed by Tetsuya Nomura, the man behind Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy series, Shin is one of the key villains of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Driven by revenge, he wants to change the world, from tip to toe, cursing his own existence and fate, so to say. His motives are probably way too interesting than the playable characters, making him probably one of the best villains of JRPGs. Well, I would call him an anti-hero to be precise, which even makes it more interesting for myself. His journey, the reason why he turned into an anti-hero, is also explained within the game, but can also be experienced by playing the DLC content Aegis War, which shapes the world of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, happens roughly around 500 years ago of actual events. It's not mandatory to play it, of course, but if you love the villain side, you would definitely be interested to it. Before talking about waifus and husbandos, let's compare the Xenoblade Chronicles titles. Although I found the first game's story more serious, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 excelled in side characters and the party. Rex feels like a typical shonen protagonist, Pyra as the big sister but love interest, Nia as sometimes tsundere but more like the best side character with depth that also helps Rex, Morak is calm, experienced member, and Zeke as idiot, a complete idiot but super strong member of the team. Whole party members feel like a shonen anime cast with its ups and downs but mostly interesting and with depth. My favorite was of course Nia, and her whole character development, her dialogue choices were absolutely interesting. Second to Nia comes Zeke. Speaking in Kansai dialect if you play in Japanese, voiced by Jack Garland of Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy, headlines and attitude quite similar to Goro Majima of Yakuza series. And I love it. And there is one character that I didn't mention and that I don't want to. The comic relief annoying as F, Tora, who nearly made me quit this game and throw it to the garbage bin. I don't want to talk about Tora, and I'm sure it is also your reason to quit Xenoblade Chronicles 2 around 5 to 6 hours. So, Rex's waifu Pyra turns out to be a blade. These blades can link with another person or human to bestow them power and weapons, and they are also a vital point of story. Their struggle, meaning of existence and purpose is being handled throughout the journey. On the other hand, it is also the customization element of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 handled with gacha mechanics. Our simp boy Rex or any other character opens a loot box to discover a new blade to fight together with. Some of these blades are designed by famous illustrators, art directors from Final Fantasy series to Tales of series, and even Code Geass. This whole blade concept is quite similar to Fate series, I think, in terms of master and servant concept. If a master dies, servant loses its memories, turns back to its loot box, and then waits for another master to come, having no clue of its previous life and journey. This is the sole fate that the villain side is fighting to change, which I absolutely adore. Each character can open up these loot boxes to discover new blades and then equip 3 different blades to use within battles. These blades can be either tank, attacker and healer, serving typical MMORPG roles, and their roles cannot be changed but only customized further to make them more efficient. One of the flaws here is that you cannot transfer one blade to another character unless you have an item called overdrive or something, which is nearly impossible to find until the late game. So let's say Rex opens up a loot box and a high tier tank blade appears. A high tier tank blade that Rex doesn't need. Could be quite efficient for another tank character after all, right? Then you can kiss your new waifu or husbando goodbye. Why? Because you might not have any chance to use it. To be honest, I found this feature quite unnecessary, and somehow I missed this whole overdrive tutorial telling me that I can switch blades with a precious item, and I ended up using it without knowing about the limit. Well, but on the other hand, even if you make some mistakes just like I did, you won't be stuck by any boss, I believe. I didn't find any of the bosses unmanageable. Each can be defeated by doing the correct approach, changing your team's role of tank, attacker and healer according to circumstances, customizing to optimum gear, and of course leveling up. Although Xenoblade Chronicles 2 offers a deeper gameplay mechanics, I found the first title's combat, let's say, smoother. It felt more responsive, felt more action-like, but by Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I was trying to tank, heal and do damage, concentrating more on combos by performing skills in the correct time, not to miss any high damage opportunity. And of course also add FPS drops that happen by high animation attacks that also kill all of these smoothness. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 obviously pushes Switch hardware to its limit, even on docked mode. I tried playing it like 4 years before on handheld and I felt that my eyeballs were melting due to low resolution. When Nintendo Switch is docked, Resolution does not bother, but some FPS drops happen by some special attacks and also in cities. Somehow the first Xenoblade Chronicles felt quite magical and charming, but Xenoblade Chronicles 2 hooked me with its villain side and story progression more. I think the correct conclusion about both of them will be they both complete each other's flaws. The first Xenoblade Chronicles fails at what the second title excels, and the second title fails at what the first game completes. And that is why I am quite hyped for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I know some of you play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 early on, either through legal or illegal ways, but please keep your spoilers to yourself. And of course I will be playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and planning to do a video about it, but it might take a month to prepare it, because I'm trying to do a lore video about Soul Hackers and a video about Live Alive, Multiverses, Digimon Survive, and of course, and then Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and maybe some Japanese exclusive Switch games like Grimoire Once More video will be here, I think. I'll manage, I hope, somehow.
君のことは俺が守る。俺の名はシン。名前は？俺も大好きだ。ニア。え？ニアのことも、みんなのことも。だからもう絶対に立ち止まらない。